After the unexpected walking on water scenes at the end of The Chosen Season 3, The Chosen fans are coming into theaters for Season 4 with elevated expectations for what each season of the series brings us. The first 3 episodes are out in theaters now, and after watching them, I must say this is the strongest opening of any Chosen season so far. I'll be breaking down the first 3 episodes of The Chosen in great detail, so if you're worried about spoilers, I'm giving you the opportunity now to leave. But here on the channel, I don't just talk about The Chosen, I also talk about other movies like Dune or Star Wars or Top Gun or Harry Potter and all the other awesome films that people enjoy. So if that's your type of content, if that's the thing you like to see on YouTube, consider subscribing to the channel and sticking around. And with that, let's dive right into what I enjoyed about The Chosen. I will get to what I did not enjoy as much or critiques I have for the first 3 episodes of The Chosen Season 4, but I'll save that for the end. Let's first get to what I thought was the best. For me, the most interesting part of the first 3 episodes is the death of John the Baptist, and not just the idea or not just, the character surrounding it, but the way they told the story, the grudge that this one character has against John the Baptist, and that she's using this performance by her daughter to gain favor in the eyes of the king so that he essentially will grant wishes, essentially, like he's a genie in the bottle. And I think that was just a really interesting way to lean into to explain the process of the death of John the Baptist, especially since he spent so much time in prison and that it kind of seemed like he was going to be let out at a certain point, and there's a lot of hope for that. And then with, one devious plan, he was beheaded. Also, the whole scene where John the Baptist enters the room where they're going to execute him, and there was the whole conversation about, he's never been to a dinner party before, but he's about to be. And just the reflection on eternity in John the Baptist's face and in his eyes, very well done to the performance there. When he turns his head and he looks out the window and sees a lamb on the side of the hill, I was weeping in my seat in the theater. There was just something that me as a believer, and my hope to be for the future of eternity, that scene was presented in such a wonderful fashion that really caused me to become emotional thinking about my own eternal future. And I think that was the point of it. And it felt like I was connected to something that a iconic biblical man, as like John the Baptist, who was given to the earth by God, who was prepared ahead of time to prepare the way for his own son, the Christ, shared a similar hope for future as someone as lowly as me. That was a very touching scene, and I have to say that was probably the strongest of the whole first 3 episodes, in my opinion. The emotional heaviness of Jesus was another big aspect that really, I felt like, spoke volumes to the audience and from Jonathan Rumi, where Jesus on multiple occasions is feeling a lot. I mean, obviously the grieving of John the Baptist, and then also the followers not fully understanding his purpose of why he came to earth, and he's communicating it as best as he's able to communicate these complex ideas of what his purpose is on earth, especially when, you're constantly reminded by disciples like Judas in the show that you're here to be a conquering king. And when are we going to start moving in that direction? Because right now we're still wandering around like we're in poverty, and that you're not going to conquer anything. And even towards the end of the 3rd episode, where Jesus is rebuking the Pharisees and becoming very emotional and also very aggressive with his message, just really feeling the need for these people to understand his position, his purpose, and their position and their purpose as believers and as kingdom builders in the world. Obviously, hindsight is 2020 as people who live in today's world, but I can't imagine what it would have been like to be a Jewish person not fully understanding the mission and the calling and having an idea of what Jesus might be here for. and then not seeing that happen or not seeing that come to pass, or putting pressure on someone like Jesus to fulfill my ideas of what his purpose is, it speaks a lot. And in some ways, to really connect with that part of the story and connect with how Jesus is feeling as the character in The Chosen, you really have to almost place yourself in the mindset of being a disciple, a follower of his during that time, with the knowledge that you would have had up to that point. And then also just the emotional relief that Jesus shows when he gives the name change to Peter, to Simon, who becomes Peter. That was a very powerful moment because Jonathan communicated perfectly the relief that you can read it in scripture, but to see it in an actor's eyes, it's representing the Christ, to see that relief, that blessing that he gives Simon Peter, the authority he gives to him in that moment, it's almost like a spontaneous blessing because he finally has heard someone say who he is and what his purpose is, essentially. And he was just looking for someone to understand that in some capacity. The next big story element that I thought was very strong was the Simon Peter and Matthew struggle, I guess. The whole issue of the contentious relationship that they have as fellow disciples of Jesus, and how a rebuke from Jesus to Matthew prompts an apology, and then the emotional journey that Simon Peter had to go on in order to be willing to forgive and accept that apology. It's something that we've almost been waiting for, and they almost gave us relief from the intense relationship in the previous seasons, but it was never really solved, that issue, the idea of forgiveness and accepting forgiveness and asking for forgiveness. It was never really solved between them for how much strife and how much pressure and how much danger and troubles that Matthew brought onto Simon before they became disciples. Before I get to the big one, if anyone's seen the big spoiler, the big moment at the end of episode 3, I just want to bring up one thing. I thought the comic relief for James and John wanting to basically be in places of authority as well and becoming jealous of Simon Peter after he received the blessing from Jesus and the name change and the authority. They also wanted their own slice of authority and importance, and they use that instead of saying like, here's a way for Jesus to teach them. They're kind of building on it and using it as a comic relief for the show, and I thought that was very well thought through. I thought it was a good choice for them to be the comic reliefs, especially during these really emotional or intense moments. Speaking of intense moments, Thomas and Rama. I think the relationship was quite beautiful actually earlier in the seasons, and in this season it kind of really flowers into something that's a lot more serious. It's less like the teenage excited energy, kind of flirtatious, and more thinking in the lines of like, we're about to be married and build a life together, and it felt more like an adult relationship, but still that cupcake phase giddiness a little bit, but also taking it seriously. It was fun to watch. And then obviously where they rip it away with Rama's death, stabbed by Quintus, it's a really big blow for people that really liked the idea of saying, hey, Thomas and Rama, that I ship them hard. But they didn't. They decided to ship Rama out of the story. And that's unfortunate, but also pivotal for Thomas. I mean, it really brings a new level of who he is as a disciple. And although it's not scriptural, I can see how it's going to lend itself very well to future events with Thomas and relating to Jesus in the future seasons. And the future rest of the season. Obviously, we have quite a few episodes more to go. So as promised, that was all the stuff I loved about the first 3 episodes. Let's quickly touch on the critiques I would have for the episode. It's not a big deal, but at this point, I feel like with how the popularity and how much attention it's getting, I feel like at this point, maybe some creative criticism might be appropriate. As a huge fan of the series and a supporter, of the series. The first thing is kind of how it opens with Mary, mother of Jesus, going to see Elizabeth. Elizabeth is with child with John the Baptist. I would have to say there was a little bit too much, I don't want to call it cheesy, but a little too much dialogue for the character of Elizabeth. And also, I feel like she was giving a little too much. I know she's excited, but I feel like her energy was always right there, and the delivery of lines was almost too perfect. I lost the sense of her being a relatable human. I don't want to equate it to maybe a lack of acting experience, but perhaps maybe the difference between a stage actor and a film actor. The lady who played Elizabeth, I don't know her background in acting. Maybe it's quite extensive, but I will say her acting as Elizabeth, saying the lines that were written for her in the script, it didn't quite fit well, but she's only there at the beginning and then a little bit later in the episode. The other thing was the pacing of some of the conversations was a bit lengthy. In season 3, I noticed this happening a little bit more. Like the conversations from character to character were written very long. Some of these scenes would last for 10 minutes. I do not have a problem with that. I do have a problem with it if it doesn't feel like there's enough substance there, and there's quite a few lengthy conversations in these first 3 episodes that work, and there's a couple that do not. As an example of one that does not, when Judas and the zealot Z, Simon, the Z character, when they're washing their laundry, they're talking about important aspects, especially for Judas's character, especially since he just came in last season. We really need to get to know him as a character, and I have no problem with building his character, but that scene in particular felt like there was a lot of empty, unimportant space in the writing of that scene. In my opinion, I would have edited that one down. I would have edited it down, shortened it to maybe be 75 to 50% shorter than what it was. And I think you probably could have accomplished the same amount of character development, especially for Judas. The only reason I give these critiques is because honestly, I think there's so much important story here. I want space and I want time to see other parts of the story. I don't want to spend too much time on a conversation that I feel like is not giving us the full extent of development that we need, when we could be showing another part that that we might be interested in or feel is important also. And then the other very small personal critique, because I could tell from the theater and the audience around me, they didn't personally have this critique because they were enjoying it and laughing. But the other comic relief for the first 3 episodes, the big one, is around the Rama and Thomas chaperoning. And it was very funny at the first couple times they played the joke of them not being able to touch, needing, if they want to go on a walk, someone has to walk with them or walk behind them, or if they want to go on a picnic, they need to have someone with them because it's just part of Jewish culture. It is a funny chaperoning joke, and they're adults, and so it's a funny, humorous situation. They did give us that joke about 4 or 5 times. I kind of felt like they were expecting it to be funny every time, and I didn't. After about the second or third time, I no longer found it funny. But like I said, it's personal. People around me were still laughing, so it is what it is. And with that, you have all the things and thoughts and ideas around the first 3 episodes of The Chosen that's in this noggin. I want to hear what you guys have to say. If you're interested in conversations or videos like this, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment. Tell me all of your thoughts if you've seen the first 3 episodes or if you've just seen the first 3 seasons. I'd love to hear what you think about The Chosen this far. I appreciate you watching. I'll see you next time.